Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, there has been a lot of talk about what the Detroit Lions should do when it comes to the number 2 overall pick. And a lot of people, and I would even say a large majority of fans and analysts, have said that the Lions could and maybe even should be trading away the number 2 overall pick. And we've talked about this numerous times, talked about potential trades with the Seahawks, the Jets, the Giants, the Panthers, the Falcons, all these top 10 teams that don't have to move up as far to get the number 2 overall pick, but are just far enough away to where they may be missing out on their guy. But what we haven't talked about yet is some of the teams outside of the top 10 that could potentially be looking to make a run. And with recent events happening in the NFL, I believe there is a scenario where that exact thing could happen. There is a scenario where I see the New Orleans Saints, who just recently acquired another first-round pick in this year's class, could be looking to make a major move in the NFL draft this season to replace one of their superstars who left in free agency. And I do believe the Lions could be a primary trade target if this is the case. So today we're going to be talking about this trading scenario between the Detroit Lions and the New Orleans Saints, what the Lions could get out of a team that sits right around the 16 to 18 range, a team sitting around the bottom half of the NFL draft, what kind of return they could get, what kind of players they could get with those picks, and what it would take for those teams to acquire the number 2 overall selection. But with all that being said, and without any further ado, let's get right into taking a look at this Detroit Lions trade scenario. Now, if you were unaware, yesterday the New Orleans Saints and the Philadelphia Eagles made a big-time trade in order for the New Orleans Saints to acquire a second first-round pick in this year's class and allow the Eagles to give up one of their firsts in this year's class in order to receive it in next year's draft class, right? So the Eagles, instead of holding 3 draft picks this year and 1 next year, they now hold 2 this year and 2 next year, while the Saints hold 2 this year and 0 next year. The trade in its entirety included the Saints receiving the 16th and the 19th pick in return for their 18th pick, a 2023 first, a 2024 second, and a 7th round selection from this year. Now, a lot of people are beginning to say, and a lot of people are saying, that the Saints overpaid in this trade, that the Saints lost this trade, and at face value, I think that is very, very true, right? You kind of trade your first round picks. I would expect the Saints to maybe finish right around that area, right, that 19 to 20 area next year, right, being that borderline playoff team, but not necessarily that Super Bowl contender. But in doing so, upgrade your 7th from a 6th, but you also give up an extra second round pick in order to do that, when I believe the Eagles were looking to trade back anyways. So from a lot of different angles, this trade doesn't make sense unless the New Orleans Saints are trying to trade up in this year's class into the top 10, maybe even the top 5, to grab an elite prospect. Now, in this trading scenario, I propose to you that the New Orleans Saints, coming off a season where they went 9-8, a starting season where their quarterback in Jameis Winston led them to a 5-2 record while throwing 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, just lost their starting franchise multiple Pro Bowl tackle, right? They lost Teron Armstead in the offseason, who eventually ended up going to the Miami Dolphins. While Teron Armstead was a 3-time Pro Bowler and was the best offensive lineman on that Saints team, they lost that guy. They lost their number 1 offensive lineman, and for a team that is still relatively well constructed, right? A team with Jameis Winston coming off his best season as a pro, leading the New Orleans Saints to a 5-3 record, throwing 14 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions in 7 games, right? Having guys like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Antonio Callaway, a solid offensive line, not a great one, but a decent offensive line when Teron Armstead was there. And then defensively, having guys like Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, Demario Davis, CJ Johnson, Marcus May and Marshawn Lattimore, they aren't a bad football team. They faced almost more injuries than anybody in the NFL, and they still finished 9-8 on the season. It's a team with a lot of grit, a lot of talent, and if they're healthy with solid quarterback play, they are still very much a top team in the NFC, and they are still very much a playoff contender, if not a Super Bowl contender, with high level quarterback play. But as I said, they lost Teron Armstead, and Teron Armstead was a big part of their offense. He's a big part of what they did well, and he was one of the leaders of that offense. Losing a 3-time Pro Bowler is never going to help you in the short term, and I believe they could be looking to replace Teron Armstead in this draft, but the number 19 pick alone and an unknown 2023 pick wasn't enough to do so. So they got a pick in this year's class, right? They got a higher pick, the 16th overall selection in this year's class, along with the 19th overall selection in this year's class, 2 mid-round picks, 2 picks ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 pick ahead of the Los Angeles Chargers, right? They have some decent draft capital now if they want to make a move. And if you want to make a move for a top tackle, Detroit might be the best option to go, right? With the Jaguars having the opportunity to go at number 1, they might take Aiden Hutchinson. I think it's a very realistic option that they do end up taking Aiden Hutchinson. But if you are the New Orleans Saints, you look at all the teams between you and Detroit and you say, how many of these guys could take a tackle, right? Houston could take a tackle, New York could take a tackle, both New Yorks could take a tackle, right? I would say that Atlanta could take a tackle, Seattle could take a top tackle prospect. By the time you get to the 16th overall pick, your guy is not going to be there. Your offensive lineman for the future isn't going to be there, right? As Ike Mekwonu, Evan Neal, and Charles Cross will likely all go within the top 10, and I think the Saints could be looking to make a move. And again, I think Detroit makes the most sense, as they would be able to jump all of those teams and get the number 1 guy in Ike Mekwonu in this draft class, and the Detroit Lions could get some considerable compensation. Now, in this mock draft scenario, or in this mock trade scenario, I have the New Orleans Saints giving up quite a bit of draft capital, right? As they do need to move up a significant amount of spots, right? They need to move from 16 to 2, right? Moving up 14 spots into the top 5, into the top 2 is going to cost a lot. So I took what the 49ers gave a season ago as a base and even added a little bit more, as they needed to move a little farther and they needed to move a little bit higher in the draft. And my mock trade scenario had the Detroit Lions receiving the 16th overall selection in this class, the 18th overall selection in this class, the 49th selection, although I think you could also take that out for maybe a 2023 second, a 2023 fifth, and a 2024 first round pick. This gives the Lions 2 in this year's class, which on top of the Rams would give them 3 first-round picks in this year's class, give them 2 in 2023 and 2 in 2024, on top of giving them an extra second-round pick in next year's class and an extra 5th in order for the New Orleans Saints to trade up to the number 2 overall selection. Now, in this scenario, they would take either Evan Neal or they would take Ike Mekwonu, whatever tackle is highest on their board. You might be saying, well, why would they give up all this draft capital if it wasn't to get a quarterback? Jameis Winston played fine. Jameis Winston actually played very well for the Saints a season ago, but they need to protect him if they want to return to the playoffs and if they want to make a realistic shot at a Super Bowl. They need to protect their quarterback, and they need their quarterback to play well. The top tackle in this class would allow them to do both, right? The Saints, even on a season where they missed the playoffs, still went 9-8. We're still right on the edge of that wild card spot and still believe they are a Super Bowl contender with a healthy quarterback and with good quarterback play, and I believe they can get there. I really believe with good quarterback play, Jameis Winston can take the Saints to the playoffs, and I think he can even take the Saints to a Super Bowl because their roster is simply that good, but they don't have a lot of time left. Cam Jordan's getting older. Demario Davis is getting older, right? Marshawn Lattimore's getting expensive. Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara in that offensive line, they're all aging. They're all getting older. The Saints Super Bowl window is closing extremely fast, and they need great offensive play in order to get there. Their defense was good a season ago. Their offense was good when their quarterbacks were playing well, but they need their quarterbacks to play well. So in this scenario, they gave up all this draft capital, right? They sacrificed some of their future. They still hold a decent amount of picks in this year's class. They still hold a decent amount of picks in next year's class, but they're not expecting to use those picks, right? They're not expecting to have high draft picks. They're expecting to have low draft picks, and in order to move up and get an elite prospect in this year's class, they're going to sacrifice some future draft capital in order to gamble for a Super Bowl. Now, in these scenarios, if the Lions were to drop to 16 and 19 respectively, at the 16th overall pick, I think you could expect Detroit to target any of, Jordan Davis, Devin Lloyd, Malik Willis, or Treylon Burks, and then a couple picks later at pick 18, right, that's your range for maybe Chris Olave or Drake London, David Ajabo, Nakobe Dean, or Devontae Wyatt if you want to go that route. There's a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different players you could pick, and it opens up a whole different world of possibilities for the Lions in the middle of the round, right, where it's more realistic to address wide receiver, where it's more realistic to address linebacker, right? With rumors swirling around, maybe it's a slim chance, but maybe Kyle Hamilton even falls to the 16th overall pick, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think he falls into the top 10 personally, but there have been some rumors swirling around that he might fall in this year's class as people start to nitpick a little bit more and start to find a few more weaknesses in his game. His draft stock seems to be falling right alongside Kayvon Thibodeau's, and I think that he could maybe even fall to the 16th overall pick. As unrealistic as that might sound, that seems like the new reality that might be coming around, right? It's a long shot, but it might still happen. So the 16th overall pick, the 18th overall pick, and the 32nd overall pick would all be at the Detroit Lions' disposal. They would have 3 first-round picks in this year's class and the 34th overall pick, the second pick in the second round, essentially having 4 first-round picks to work with in this year's class to bolster the roster and get us some big-time playmakers for this class. Now, I know some people are going to be upset about the Lions moving out of the top 5 and missing out on a quote-unquote elite prospect, but at this point in the season, there is no slam dunk pick in my opinion. There doesn't seem to be that Penei Sewell in this year's class, right? Last year, Penei Sewell was the guy. There was no discrepancy. There was no disagreement. Penei Sewell was the guy. He's a great tackle. He was a great prospect. He was a great athlete. He had a high floor, a higher ceiling. He was the guy, right? There was no discrepancy. There was no arguing. Penei Sewell was a great player, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew what Penei Sewell was, and everybody knew how good Penei Sewell was going to be. This year, that's not the case, right? It's Kayvon Thibodeau's great. Kayvon Thibodeau's trash. Aiden Hutchinson's great. Aiden Hutchinson's hit his ceiling, right? Kyle Hamilton's the best player in the class. Kyle Hamilton might not even be a top 10 pick, right? This and that, there's so many discrepancies, right? All of a sudden, you have Trayvon Walker jumping into the top 5, where Trayvon Walker a few months ago, or even a few weeks ago, wasn't even a top 15 prospect. There's movement, there's discrepancy, there's arguments, and there isn't a home run, slam dunk, guaranteed pick like Penei Sewell. So it might make sense for the Detroit Lions to trade down, get a little bit more of that safer option, maybe not the top 10 pick you were hoping for, but get 3 really solid, really good offensive players, or get 3 really good first-round picks in your draft class in order to bolster and in order to speed up the rebuilding process. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about this trade scenario down in the comments below. Would you make this trade? Would you move out of the top 5 if it were in order for the Lions to receive 3 first-round picks and a little bit more compensation? I'd be very curious what you guys think. But with all of that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!